So Rob, we've talked a bit about the way in which you teach reststroke to people, the physics and the mechanics that you employ to teach them. How about some applications in the method? Could you share some of those applications with us?
Right. Okay, so I think that irrespective of the technique, whether we're learning thumb or reststroke or free stroke, we're basically after the same musical protocols, right? The techniques just sort of shift the ground under us a little bit, but it's always this progression towards mic ideals.
Same
right?
objective.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and with the aim being the ultimate integration of all of the techniques. Yeah. So of course, in our workup of any new material, we basically have two levels. The first one being tone and flow, and the second one being accents.
Okay.
All right. So if I take a little example here, my tone and flow. So there's a lot that I can say about that I've accomplished. My notes are uniform, the tone is good, the rhythm is firm, steady, just in terms of the note values, right? But the big thing is that I sort of noticed you dozing off a little bit there. Something is missing.
Well, okay.
Now, let's put in the missing ingredient, okay, which in this case is just the simple fact of the grouping accent. Have you ever thought about why 4/8 notes are arranged under a beam?
Because they're meant to be part of a group.
Yeah, exactly. And how do we signify the group? By simply lightly stressing the beginning of each group, right? So.
Okay. And can I ask, how early on in the method does this piece come into play? Is it very late? Or?
Well, it's maybe on about the 10th page of the reststroke book.
That's quite early. I would say.
Yeah.
It's played that way with accents. It's it sounds good.
They don't play it that way for
I know,
quite a long time.
The way in which you endeavor for them to play it sounds good.
Yeah, and the big thing is there's something to shoot at. I mean they're starting out. Oh, that horrible!
Just getting the notes.
That terrible leap there, Mr. Luse, from the first string to the third string. Yeah, and there's actually quite a few of those leaps in it. So this is something that we have to learn to do, isn't it? But having said all that, within 2 or 3 weeks or so, and we always build the metronomic increments, right? And they tick off the number that they're able to do. So this piece can be played for forever.
For some time, some time,
Yeah, and so we always want to have a certain amount of this sort of, as the Germans say, Spielmusik, that just for playing, for having fun, We do have this bit at the end here where we... So that gives them practice making rallentando. And I try to explain to them there is that when you're slowing down, think of the notes as written on a piece of rubber, and the rubber is stretching.
Okay.
You see, so that between each of the notes there's a little bit more space.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, I think it
creates the impression that you want. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we've got that tone and flow and grouping accents. We spoke about short phrases, I remember, when we were talking about the thumb. But so far you haven't spoken much about short phrases in relation to reststroke.
Right.
Yeah.
Short phrase is the bringing in from the mic side of what they call the slur. Which to a mic player has a rhetorical element, right, an expressive element. So the first type of short phrase that we study is the pianistic slur. The pianistic slur being da di di da, right, and the point there being that I have to strike both notes. Okay.
Separately, I mean, as two fingers. Yeah.
With the right hand. Everything on the piano has to be played that way.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that is our point of origin on this. Then later, of course, we're going to go to the more guitaristic version, where we the second note with the left hand, but that won't be for a minute or two. Okay, so now let's talk about the problem of sympathetic overtones, okay, which I call fondly sparkies.
Sparkies.
Yeah, and the thing about sparkies, the guitar has to be out there. Hear it come in.
That's loud.
Now it's loud,
That's
right?
loud, yes.
If your guitar is well tuned, you'll have magnificent sparkies. And if it's not, something's a little wrong, boys and girls. Okay, so now when I play, see, obviously the sparky is banging away, but do we find it objectionable?
No.
No, not at all. Okay, so good sparkies are felt but not heard. All right. So now the next problem is, what happens when I go?
That's when it becomes undesirable.
Absolutely. I mean, that is not a rest. It's simply a change in tone color of the note.
Yes.
Right. Okay, well, I mean, there's nothing new about recognizing this fact, you know. The point is, what do we do about it?
Yes.
Now, the old method, you know, of doing this, I don't know, have you any experience with this in playing rests?
We just try to mute the bass strings.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Strings 4, 5, and 6.
Which is certainly better than nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and
Okay.
what I would say about this, you know, is that it still is lacking any sense of style, and it isn't very flexible, you know. So if we want to bring the sparky damping into the mic world, then we really need to incorporate it in a gesture.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So that we're back to this idea of, you know, and
something visual.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
Or you know, right? And that's so important in the performance sense, you know, especially with guitar.
Yeah.
It tends to be so rigid, you know. We're sitting here like robots playing, and because of the fact that the guitar community doesn't really emphasize gestural playing so much, you know, that I don't think a great deal of good work has been done on this from what I can see, or else you'll come out with these really bizarre manifestations like early Breen, you know, where he's all cross-eyed and, you know, just, I mean, his concerts, brilliant as though they were. Sometimes I actually had to just close my eyes.
Yeah, because some of his expressions were
Yeah.
rather distracting.
He was so totally in a world of his own, you know,
Yeah.
and then so
way out there.
that's the fanatic fringe thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't think you'd ever see a violinist do that, you know, because they've all got, you know, I mean, well, Sophie Mutter, and you know, man, I can't take my eyes off of her, right?
And they've also got gestures through which to express themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move towards gestures, and so I make my, that would be the right, just the basic idea.
Something you can see now. Yes.
Right. The idea that I'm moving in a fluent way to cut off, and all right. So now, fine. When I play, there's actually only one note that is a serious sparky note, which is this one. The C is absolutely nothing. I can play C's forever. I won't have any overtones, and then the D is a minor sparky problem. But for the sake of homogeneity, if I have time, right, or it might be, who knows, you know, but just that some sort of sympathy, you know, within the physique to the notes that are being played. Okay, now let's go to the actual short phrase. Right, and without the cutoff,
yeah, the short phrase it's not a short phrase.
it actually comes out sounding, you know, so
you're really achieving, you know, the rest through that mechanism.
An expressive grouping, right?
I was just wondering if you had like any other applications or repertoire through which the mechanisms of palm and just thumb and finger stroke, you know, are applied.
Right. Okay, so and also maybe we can talk a little bit about the idea of bringing in Iberian ethos into the music, because I think we all are Spaniards at heart.
Well, the guitar is
absolutely
associated with Spain, at least.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Once you make that choice, of an instrument.
So this takes us into Spanish flavor. Does
exactly.
It? Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and I of course started out as a flamenco quote unquote player. I'm glad I didn't know then how pathetic the attempts were, but never mind. It did the trick at the time. Yeah, and so we bring that thread into the method, the Iberian thread, and it turns out, that there's quite a few advantages in doing this, in the sense that we tend to have a lot of pedal notes.
Yes.
Right, with the melody in the middle register or lower register. So that is very good for register equality. Again, in this piece, for instance, if I were to play, there's absolutely nothing there whatsoever, whereas the minute that I go,
I can hear the melody moving around between the registers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're achieving that through the physics that you're teaching.
Talk a little bit about this now. That here, that's arm, and here, that is just fingers, right? So. Okay. Now, melody. No. Right? My arm has got to transfer into the fingers. And then immediately return. Right? So that mixture of force.
Oh, there's even, would you say, a tinge of flamenco in there?
I hope so.
I can hear it.
Would have been disappointed if you hadn't said that.
Oh, yes, I mean, yes, I definitely heard it.
Good.
From what I could see and hear. Yeah.
And now we also can have situations where there is no arm force, where everything is just fingers.
I think the big difference is that a student is being told how exactly to achieve this effect, rather than just being told play more expressively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the level of musicality rises proportionately, doesn't it?
Yes.
The idea that we're not just playing notes, but directing the listener's ear towards the part.
Yep, that we want them to listen to as the melody. Yeah.
Right. Now, going on to this idea of the short phrase, within the rest stroke, that we have arm and stroke. Right. So. Yeah, there's that little echo is just stroke, isn't it? Okay, so taking it again. And I might, if I were a little more, I might move the rest stroke a bit towards the sound hole. Okay, and then.
With that first short phrase, that's on an open string, right?
Yeah,
that tends to be loud.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And you're already playing that loud.
I have to be a little careful.
Okay. So you have to make a little adjustment there.
Yeah, precisely. And then when I come to the one on the second and third string.
Yeah.
Right, so that make them as similar as possible.
Right. And these are 3-note short phrases.
Are they? I suppose you could think of them that way, because the bass does need to be medium, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and and then our question of short phrase versus long phrase.
Yeah, one thing that initially that drew me to examine your method more and look you up was how very early on you teach phrasing, long phrase. Yeah. And I think this is a very apt moment for us to talk about your long phrase,
right,
and how you teach it, the elements of what phrasing is, which is like so mysterious to most people who try to teach music.
Yeah. Well, the basic essence of the phrase is just that the notes belong together, and that we're kind of deducing whatever strategy seems most appropriate, because there actually no two phrases are ever exactly alike.
True.
But if we want to just generalize about it, we can say that a phrase is like two hairpins, and now the hairpins can be adjusted. There might be something louder towards the beginning, or there might be a couple of subsidiary, but the idea that I think it's safe to say that for a phrase it will begin and end more softly than whatever happens in the middle.
Okay.
So of course this comes back to my idea within the phrase of being against the string, right? And that as the phrase develops, I'm applying more pressure, and as the phrase fades, less pressure.
Yep.
Right? So it's the same as crescendo, diminuendo.
Okay.
In that respect, right? So here, following those principles. So if I combine now short phrase and long phrase,
the crescendo diminuendo idea, but it's not exactly that. Yeah,
right.
It's more singing.
Yeah. Can be expressed to whatever degree of subtlety seems to be required.
A lot more flexible, you would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you hear great singers or violinists and so on, there's always that sense of the weight, but it isn't necessarily something that they're doing consciously. It's just that's how they perceive the music.
Yep.
And they're not going to start it as loud as they have it in the middle, even though the difference may just be very, very subtle. But it's still there. And the point is that it doesn't go like that. It's always some concoction of this. I mean, unless you're doing some shock effect or something like that. So do you feel that gets us to where we ought to be on the rest stroke technique? Is there anything else that...
Well, I think most certainly this covers in great detail what I was hoping you would talk to us about in rest stroke.
Okay.
So I think this is a good point for us to move on.
Okay.
I would say.
Let's do it.
Yes.